But right now we are inaugurating. We kind of got this when David was a guest last week. So David Griscom from the Michael Brooks Show of the Griscom Economic Minutes said earlier that he's my second favorite Texan after the one I'm married to, and he's agreed to come back and make the kind of stuff we were talking about last time a regular weekly segment. I think we could call it Outlaws and Revolutionaries.
I love it.
So I saw you take a sip of something earlier. What was that?
Dude, I'm having some Buffalo Trace, which is my go-to bourbon these days.
Nice. Yeah, no, I have just been, drinking this Oberon, but I did pour a glass of bourbon to start when you came on to do the segment.
Hell yeah.
So this is Woodford Reserve. So it's a pretty nice smooth bourbon. But on a not entirely unrelated topic, I want to talk about country music. You defended the leftist credentials of Willie Nelson last time. Thought we'd maybe go through a couple more of these guys, the first couple of these segments, and then just kind of settle into you can just talk about some of your favorite music, and when politics comes up, it comes up. But the obvious place to go now for this week would be to talk about Johnny Cash.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to talk about Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash is somebody whose legacy I don't feel like you have to defend as much because he is such a rebel figure for so many people. But I just wanted to give a little vocabulary to that argument to folks. I don't know, Johnny Cash is remembered more for sort of being, drinking a lot, causing a lot of trouble, and just sort of having a kind of FU persona. But people forget about how radical a lot of his music is. Obviously, there's Man in Black, which is a phenomenal song if you're not familiar with it. It's basically where he explains why he wears the black, and he tells this story where he says, I like to wear a rainbow every day and tell everybody that the world is not okay, and then he starts that everything in the world is okay, and then he starts going through the problems in the world, primarily that a lot of people are really suffering and are unable to provide for themselves. He wears the black for the poor and beaten down. Really a radical anthem in a lot of ways. He's seeing and presenting himself as a kind of champion for the people who are left behind, which I think is fundamental to Johnny Cash's music and persona and his legacy, in my opinion. But a couple songs that people might not know as much, because what kind of annoying lefties get on about Johnny Cash is that, he had a little bit of a patriotic streak. Obviously, the song Ragged Old Flag, which, I think played in the Super Bowl or something like that, definitely plays on those things. But I think it's a great song and a good sentiment. But another thing that he gets a lot of flack for is for playing for Richard Nixon in the White House during the Vietnam War. And I understand why people are worked up about that, but I think a lot of people forget the song that he sang to Richard Nixon, which is a song called What is Truth? And it's basically a song that he wrote. I can't remember the university that he was playing at, but basically he was playing at a university, and he spent, the afternoon talking with people, and he started writing down sort of their thoughts and their questions. And, I won't sing the whole song or even go through all the lyrics, but basically the song it's an anti-war song. It's an anti-Vietnam song. It's saying, why are we fighting the war? And the lonely voice of youth asks, what is truth? And honestly, if you do believe in the power of music and art, which I do, if you could imagine any better song to sing to somebody like Richard Nixon, I think that's really it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think even in terms of the patriotic streak, I think if your perspective is that all sort of national identity is bad, because we should be internationalists, and I agree with some of the premise, of course. I think international working class solidarity is important, but I think you're also going to miss a lot of the shades, right?
Yeah.
That not all national identity has the same political character, right? So certainly, for example, right, when I think about Johnny Cash and the patriotic element of his music, one of the first songs that comes to my mind is the Ballad of Ira Hayes.
Yeah, that's a great jam. No, I think that's 100% right. And I mean, even zooming out a little bit, I know patriotism, I mean, it's such a toxic word, and most of that is just pure ideology. But, that being said, like everyone knows, I mean, not everybody knows me, but for people who know me, know that I'm a socialist and a radical, all these things. But I like this place a lot, and I like the people here, and I like the culture, and I have very fond feelings about this country too. And I think that that's something that we shouldn't just cede. I think it's a very universal thing, and it's actually something that we should cultivate. Not necessarily like kind of like a right patriotism or something like that,
Yeah.
but a kind of like a love for the people in general, the people around you, and a love for your community is a beautiful thing, and we shouldn't shy away from it just because so much of like patriotism, and I wouldn't even call my feelings to be patriotic per se, because that is such obviously like a right-wing militaristic idea. We shouldn't shy away from being able to say like, oh, I love this country and I love the people in it, I love the stories and the history and all that. But there's one more song that I would like to read a couple lyrics from.
Yeah.
Because it's a song.
Just quick before you do that, though, right? Like I did want to, I did want to jump in, just kind of
Oh, let's go
underline.
for it. No, go for it first then.
Yeah, underline and circle that point, right? Like that there is something that is that I don't know. Like this always bugs me, right? I've talked about this on here before. Like when like you get like a sort of certain like kind of lefty who will like every 4th of July they'll post stuff on social media about how like the American Revolution was actually bad and you shouldn't celebrate this and whatever. And like I always think like, okay, this is something that's obviously you're talking about very complicated history and there's lots of real stuff that you could bring up to support that narrative. But like also there's lots of stuff that wouldn't, right? And in terms of thinking about how that sort of past, democratic revolution with all of its internal contradictions, right, could relate to what we want now. This just kind of always struck me as the most tone deaf response, right? First, because like come on, like just it wouldn't kill you to just like have a hot dog, have a couple of drinks, like enjoy the people that you love, right? That like don't be a complete weirdo about this, but like also that like you can look at different aspects of that history and draw different things from it, the same way that in the Ballad of Ira Hayes, right, Cash is talking about this patriotic imagery, right, raising the flag at Iwo Jima, but like he's talking about it in the context of talking about this Native American soldier who's been treated very badly, by the country that he lives in, and so there's a lot there for us politically, and I've always liked, one of those Mensheviks who I probably have many more fond feelings about than you do. Michael Harrington, has this line in his book Fragments of the Century.
Great line. I love this line.
Yeah, where he says, it was as a socialist and because I was a socialist that I fell in love with America. And saying that, I'm not indulging in romantic nostalgia about youthful days on the road, but rather underlining a crucial political truth. If the left wants to change this country because it hates it, then the people will never listen to the left and the people will be right. To be a socialist, to be a Marxist, is to take an act of faith, of love even, toward this land. It is to sense the seed beneath the snow, to see beneath the veneer of corruption and meanness and commercialization of human relationships, men and women capable of controlling their own destinies. To be a radical is to be in the best and only decent sense of the word, to be patriotic. And, and I'm sure there's stuff there that could be nitpicked, but I think the basic sentiment is really good and really well put. And that, like, I think if we're just going to sort of like react to any kind of musical invocation of American identity, like a vampire reacting to the cross, like that's just not a very good political instinct.
I 100% agree. I'd also add that, formal freedoms matter and formal principles matter. And even though we know, for example, the line "all men are created equal" has never been realized or even come close to being realized, and was a very almost like cynical line to put in, at a time obviously when people were in human bondage. The fact that people grow up in a political community where that is taught as like this is the founding idea of the country, something that social, like to me, like that premise is a socialist premise, and it's something that we should actually invoke, and to say like actually let's hold ourselves to these kind of standards. I think there's a huge strategic failing to walk away actually from a lot of the rhetoric, which yes, it's not been met, but that doesn't mean that people don't have like a feeling and a beauty and a motivation to try to enact that on a certain level.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, I think that like you can acknowledge the contradiction between the ideals, you know, the best of the ideals of the American Revolution, of the democratic tradition, and the reality of America both then and now. But like acknowledging that contradiction doesn't mean that you should throw out the first part, right? It means that you should, like, the much better strategy is to hold on to the first part and use it, you know, in order to expose the failures of the second part. But before I cut you off,
Yeah.
you're going to talk about another Cash song.
Yeah, no, I'll do it real quick. But just before, you know, we have a great history in this country too. Johnny Cash recognized that. A fun thing about Johnny Cash, a lot of people didn't know, that he actually played John Brown in the television, like the long form television show North and South, which is just another great Johnny Cash
That is an amazing detail.
tidbit. And he looks great as a John Brown too. But I wanted to just point out a great working class song by Johnny Cash called Oni. And I'll just read the opening line from it. Where he says, "I dedicate this song to the working man, for every man that puts in 8 or 10 hard hours a day of work and toil and sweat. Always got somebody looking down his neck, trying to get more out of him than he really ought to have to put in." Right? Which is, in my opinion, is just like a great example of, you know, kind of capitalist exploitation as a concept. But anyways, this song is a really fun song because the story is basically a guy who spent his whole life working at a factory, and it's his last day. And he knows that he's going to get, you know, clapped for and get a gold watch or whatever when he walks out. But what he's really excited for is when the whistle blows, he's going to punch his supervisor in the mouth. It's a great jam. I'll post it on Twitter after this. It's a really fun one.
That is amazing. And I love that he played John Brown. I was actually just reading this article in Unheard by our friend and comrade Ralph Leonard, which starts out with this great detail, right? Which is, I'm just going to read out here. Shortly after his divorce from the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X was asked in an interview whether he would accept whites into his short-lived upstart organization, the Organization for Afro-American Unity, OAAU. Definitely not, he instantly snipped. But after a moment's contemplation, he added, "If John Brown were still alive, we might accept him."
I mean, fair enough.
All right. Thank you so much, David. I know that you're smoking some meat right now.
I'm interested. My poor man's brisket is going great. I'm about to pull it off in about 20 minutes.
Nice. All right. See you next week, David.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.